Welcome to the Hoof and Fang podcast. I'm Kirt Graves.
And I'm Maz Maddox.
And here we are. It's vacation week for me.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be here.
I know. The first thing you said to me walking in the door
I was like, hello, I don't want to be here. Can't tell you how hard it was to get in the car and come here today.
I mean, I don't blame you. But
yeah. Like
definitely different tones today.
Yeah. Well, I knew I only had 2 days this week.
Mm-hmm.
I scheduled a tiny little book for those 2 days. I'm one part of a multicast for a Macmillan horror story.
Mm-hmm.
It took me like 2 hours to prep it yesterday and like 2 hours to record it.
Yeah.
Like I was done.
That's awesome.
By the time I left yesterday, I was done. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I really have no reason to go into work tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's podcast recording day. Podcast, and we didn't take the week off, which in hindsight I'm like, why didn't I just say we're taking a week off?
Yeah,
it's my vacation week. But anyways, here we are.
Yes.
Couldn't want to be somewhere else more than I do right now. Not anywhere else, but like some very specific places I'd rather be.
That's totally fair.
And I'm very excited about leaving tomorrow. So that's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
Tired. I walked out of the other office where I just got done with the day job, and I'm not really done. I'm just, it's paused. So I'm more like, I'm so happy to be right here and not dealing with the other things. So yeah, different energy levels.
Coming at this from different angles today.
For sure.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it happens. It's a glimpse behind the curtain.
Right. Yeah. I just cannot wait to get the heck out of here.
Yeah.
So excited for a vacation, and like a true vacation. There's no work. There's no family obligations. There's nothing. It's just a vacation. We're just going for fun.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait.
It's the best. Yeah. It's the best kind of vacation. Because I think we're the same. Like if I have to do family vacations, and I love seeing my family, but it's a chore.
Right.
There's no downtime. I'm visiting people. We're constantly doing stuff. I'm negotiating times, the entire, event. Mm-hmm. So going to just like me and one other person just going to go fuck around for a couple days.
Right. Brilliant.
Choice. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've said this before, perhaps even on the podcast, but like the nice thing about New York City for John and I is like we've each been many times at this point. So we don't need to do the touristy stuff. There's not that feeling of like, oh, we're in New York. We gotta do New York stuff. Like, no, we're there to see friends, eat great food, go to see theater.
Love it.
We've done, and like, like new touristy stuff pops up, and sometimes there's like, oh, we could do that, but it's like, we'll spend one morning doing that. And otherwise it's just like, it's just chill. We're just kind of hanging out. Like, we'll see what we want to do. Mm-hmm. That's my vibe.
Yeah.
On vacation.
That's the best kind of vacation.
So yeah, today don't want to be here. When I get back next week, Tuesday, and we're recording, probably won't want to be here.
Yeah. Cause you'll be coming right out of vacation. Oh my God. You're going to be like, why are we here?
Right. Yeah.
Why did we take this week off? Yeah.
Because we have our people. They depend on us.
Yes.
They're really counting on this level of banter.
Get them through the day.
Yeah. We really make their Fridays. So what are we talking about today?
So I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about Independent Bookstore Day, and more importantly, kind of getting involved in local bookstore events. Because next week on the 27th is Independent Bookstore Day, where it's encouraged to go and shop local indie bookstores. And I was kind of talking to Shen this morning about Independent Bookstore Day, and she was like, what does your community do to get involved in that? I was like, what do you mean? She was like, well, writers and creatives and stuff, how do you support your local bookstores? And I was like, I don't think I do enough, honestly. Yeah. Like I try to partner as much as I can, but honestly, I don't really think about it. Typically when I'm thinking to go to like book events, I'm thinking big conventions. Actually, side note, I got invited to Queers and Quills in Portland, Oregon next year.
Hey,
yeah, and I've never been to Portland, so that's really excited. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
And that kind of got me thinking about it. I was like so excited to get invited to that, but I haven't even talked to Rebecca at Paper Crane about like what she's doing next week.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of wanted to maybe throw it out there in the universe and discuss a little bit about what authors and narrators and other bookish people can do to maybe open that door a little bit more for local bookstores and help prop them up a little bit and, get more involved into that space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think as consumers, we can do our best to support them.
Yeah.
And that takes several forms. It is, we're at a strange point in the world where I know we need to support indie bookstores, but there's also one huge bookstore chain that's also like on the brink of collapse.
Yeah.
And it's like, but do we also kind of need to support them?
I know, it's a weird thing.
Unless we want bookstores to go away altogether.
Right, which we do not.
We have to like, because in a lot of places like Barnes & Noble is the bookstore. It's all they have.
Yeah.
Even here in Green Bay, I think we have 2 independent bookstores, tiny little ones.
Yeah, I think tiny ones, yeah.
That don't, I've tried sometimes to go buy a new release from those bookstore. One is purely a used bookstore, so that's out. And the one that does do new releases, it's like, unless you special order it, they probably don't have the type of books I'm looking for. I'm looking for a lot of queer rom-coms, like, the big name ones. Like, I could probably walk in there and get a TJ Klune.
Sure.
But a lot of the other ones that I narrate that are on like Barnes & Noble shelves, they're not on the indie shelves.
Yeah.
So shop indie when you can as a consumer. If you can't shop indie, I think it's okay to go shop at your local Barnes & Noble if you want to support them as well, which is also something I do. And then for audio, unsubscribe from Audible. Take that exact same $14.99 and take it over to Libro FM.
Yeah.
And sign up to support a local bookstore. And when you get your audiobooks, a portion of that profit goes to that bookstore. I don't know how much. It's probably not a lot if we're being honest.
Yeah, probably not. But it's a couple bucks.
But it's something. Or you can do what I do, and like I have my Audible account for those books that Audible has a stranglehold on and doesn't share with Libro FM. And then for my wide release books, I always get them through Libro. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate truth that Audible has that grasp on a lot of indie authors.
Cause it's how they make their money.
I know. It sucks though. It's just part of the industry. But
So, and it's such a incentive. I mean, they make it worth it for those authors to do that. Hopefully the industry will do something about that soon.
Hopefully.
They're finally, I feel like there's more buzz now than there ever was about making sure that authors are properly reimbursed for sales of their books.
Yeah.
So
that is
fingers
nice.
Crossed.
Yeah. You're seeing that conversation more and more and people are making waves, which is nice.
Yeah. So anyways, to me, that's number one. Just as a consumer, as an individual, buy indie when you can.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, for authors, it can be hard to break down that terrifying feeling of just going in and asking if you can do an event. I got lucky because with Paper Crane, Rebecca reached out to me first or tagged me. So I was like, oh, the door's already open. Right. But I have yet to summon the courage to go to Barnes & Noble and be like, hey, can you carry my books? Or like, what if I bring you some? Or can I do a signing? And for sure, nobody's going to like travel and go see me, but
you never know.
You never know. But it's going to be more, you're there, you're making it feel like you're more of the community is in these spaces. So even if nobody buys your books, you just having a table set up and saying you're a local author gets people excited and gets more people kind of allowing them to shop independent or to look at like indie published people and just kind of opening that door. But yeah, I'm going to maybe challenge myself to do that with Barnes & Noble. They'll probably say no because it's so weird about, they have really strict guidelines about it, but yeah. And yeah, I need to do more stuff with Paper Crane too. I think we're doing something for Pride, but we haven't nailed anything down. So I'll announce it once I know for sure. But yeah, definitely partnering with anybody local that'll just let you be in those spaces. Join their book clubs too. Like be involved in that, pitch books. Maybe not always your books because you don't want to be a dick, but just kind of be in those spaces, even if you can't do it in a, selling your book capacity, just being there and being present and kind of getting involved in the community definitely helps too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and as much as being present personally helps, also just be present like online.
Yeah.
Like, use your social media presence as an author or as a narrator to promote those indie bookstores. Like just last week, maybe it was the week before, I noticed that the indie bookstore from my hometown that I love because it's super queer and it's in my hometown, and it's like so great to go back there and see that place exists.
Yeah.
Because I think it's good for my community for that place to exist. The owner of the shop was holding up a book that I narrated.
Oh,
and
that's
I was
amazing.
Like, all right, here we are on Instagram. I'm going to make that a story. I'm going to say like, oh, here's the independent bookstore from my hometown holding, like, promoting a book that I narrated. And it was just like this like little kismet, you know, and it was like, I'm going to promote that. And once again, say like, people, go to this place. It's fun. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's a bit tough to use the platform that way because so many people who follow me are not in my hometown.
Yeah.
Like very few local people who know me for just being Kirt follow me there because that's mostly for readers and connecting with authors and stuff. But, but I do try to at least like lift up the indie bookstores that are in my area. When I travel, I like to go to indie bookstores and post about it and look for titles that I've done and take pictures and you know, and tag them in posts there too. Because you know, and like it's fun too. Sometimes you'll talk about an indie bookstore, and then some reader who you know has been following you for a while, you're connected on a few different places, will say like, "Oh my God, that's my bookstore." Yeah, and it's like, "Oh, cool,
that's amazing."
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So I say that's another way to prop them up. Like when you go to an indie bookstore, talk about it.
Yeah.
Like we don't have like influencer level followings, but like we have followings. We have people who like to see what we're up to and will maybe be reminded. Oh yeah, I gotta go check out my local bookstore.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. It's just to kind of just get people to think about it when next time they're out. Because I mean, a lot of people read digital these days, which is totally valid. But if you are in the mood for a physical book, or if you love a book so much that you want it in physical, just go to a local place instead of getting it off of the Zon as they do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Make it cool.
Yeah.
Make it seem cool to go to an indie bookstore. That's what we're doing.
For sure. Plus, they usually have some cool stickers and bookmarks. I've become a goblin about that crap.
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten back into analog books, which honestly, I don't have the space to be doing this, but I've gotten addicted to just being back into like paper books. And so my bookmark collection has gotten a little off the rails, but that's, an extra hobby. So, yeah.
You were looking for one of those. Right?
Yeah, I need another thing to do.
And a thing to spend money on.
Yeah. Everybody needs that because I am so rich.
Yeah. All that book money.
I know.
Just, you got to go spend it because it just keeps coming in faster and faster. Yeah.
Other than book clubs, getting involved, making sure you're shopping there, which is the kind of the obvious thing. I guess check to see if they have an online store. I never think about that either. A lot of these places
almost always they have a mechanism for ordering something to their store. Even if it's like, send us an email and tell us what you want. We'll have it there for you. Like, almost always there's that. Yeah. The events thing to me is a hurdle. Yeah. Because I, in a similar way to you, would have a hard time just walking into a store. Like I've had conversations with the checkout people at these bookstores where they're like, "Oh my God, I love TJ Klune. Have you read his other stuff?" And I've just gone,
You haven't been like, well, I mean,
because it's so strange, to have that moment, it's like, to be like, well, actually, like I don't have that in me, but I should, and I should say that, and I should be like, and if you ever want to do something with the narrator of these books, like, I'm here, I'm local. Yeah. And again, I don't know how many people it would draw, but like to be able to say I was doing it, to be able to brag about it on social media that, I'm doing an event in my local bookstore. Like, that's half the battle. It's just being able to talk about it online.
Yeah. And I think we're both really bad about that because I don't want to go in being, to me, when I try to sell myself, I always sound like an asshole to myself. Like, I'm like, I write these books and I'll bring them in for you. And I just immediately am like, they don't care. You're wasting their time. Leave them alone. They just want to live their life, But yeah, I think we need to acknowledge that would be cool for a local place, even if they're not super into what we do.
Right.
If just having a local author stop by probably would be amazing, even if it's just a couple people swinging by. Like when I did one event over at Paper Crane, and I think I sold 2 books, but there were people who already knew who I was because Rebecca's amazing and talks me up.
Yeah.
But everyone else just swung through and like hung out and talked to me about writing stuff and then left. And it was great. I didn't make any money, but I had a great time talking to everybody.
Yeah.
So.
And then did you post about it online?
Of course I did.
Great.
Yeah. I took pictures. I was so proud of my dumb little table I set up.
See?
She brought dinosaur cookies. Like, it was great. She did a good job.
Well, but it sounds to me like you got people to walk through the door.
Yeah.
Which is the point of why we're talking about this. Like,
right.
Do the event, not for you, but do it for the people that might walk in the door.
Yeah.
And acknowledge the shop. It gives them something to promote too.
Right.
Like, it's got to be hard to be a bookstore and
imagine.
like trying to figure out things like how do we promote ourselves besides just promoting individual books and picking which books to put out there, like trying to have an identity as a store and like
right.
having an event to advertise again is sort of like half the battle. Like it's having the thing to talk about and to put out into your community and say, come.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because if there's no event, it's hard to say like, just come shop in my store.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, eventually you're going to, somebody's going to disagree. Eventually you're going to run out of things to buy. So having those events that don't cost anything, they're free, you can meet a creative person and just talk about books without having to feel like you have to spend money on things. That's really important because sometimes you don't have money, but you just want to go to an event. It's something to do.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're not interested in doing something like a signing or that, where you are the focus of the attention, you could also offer to like teach a class.
Oh, there you
or
go.
Like an introductory.
Yeah.
Like here's intro to author 101. Like I could do like introduction to narration. An hour-long thing. That would, then you're not like the come see me person, but you are saying like, here's the thing I know about and I can offer some value. And if you're interested, you can come up. You can come here. You can find out.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think I tend to not think of myself as any type of authority on anything, even though I write books.
We're not. We're absolute fools.
Yeah.
We know nothing. But they don't know that.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless they listen to this podcast.
Yeah, then they're like, I'm wise to you now.
We could do a seminar on how to start a podcast with an author and a narrator.
Hey, there you go.
I think we're the foremost experts on that at this point.
For sure. I think we are absolutely our gold star.
Is anybody else out there doing this? Let us know in the comments.
Yes. Yeah, actually, if there is, I would love to hear the podcast. Right? That would be amazing.
Yeah. And also let us know in the comments what you do to support your local bookstore. And if there's ideas that we didn't pitch, we'd love to share them with the rest of our listeners.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So this week we had the chance to talk to author Chloe Archer. Chloe writes sci-fi and paranormal rom-coms with laugh-out-loud humor because she's all about bringing the funny, sexy back. Chloe is a fur mama to 2 adorable Yorkies, Jasper and Teddy, and she loves them in a crazy dog mama kind of way. When she isn't busy writing, she enjoys visiting friends and family, traveling, reading, binge-watching movies and TV shows, and practicing her karaoke skills. Here's a conversation with Chloe. Welcome to the Hoof and Fang podcast, author Chloe Archer. It's so great to be able to meet you.
Likewise.
So
I'm super excited to be here.
We were just talking a little bit before we started recording. And first, I just want you to tell us more about your video cast.
Oh, yeah. So I have a vidcast called Tea, Tentacles, and Talk, Cozy Conversations about LGBTQ plus romance. And I've been going for... I'll have my 2-year anniversary in November. So not that long. I only do 1 episode a month because I have, a full-time day job and kind of like a full-time side job as an author. And so, that was what was manageable for me, but I kind of got into doing it because I wanted to network more with like other people in the genre as a new author. And I thought, well, this is a great way for me to kind of like ask all the types of questions I have about writing process and get, input from people who've had all kinds of different experiences. Other people who are new, people who are kind of midway in their career, and like people who've been doing this for 10 plus years. And it's just been really invaluable to me. And I think it's really fun too. I think that a lot of times, readers like to see their authors be people. And so having a vidcast is kind of a way for them to be part of a more informal conversation. And I always encourage my guests to bring a beverage with them, and we just kind of chill and hang out and talk all things LGBTQ plus romance.
Oh, if only we didn't record in the afternoon.
Yeah, right.
Because a beverage some days
that would be lovely.
So nice. It's funny because it's not like the quiet part. You sort of said the quiet part out loud, which is just how useful this is from a networking perspective.
Oh, big time.
Like when you do one of these projects, it's like, yes, it's wonderful for the audience, but like it's also great for you just to be able to talk to other people who do what you do,
Right.
Or who exist in the same world. And because this is an anomaly. The fact that Maz and I ended up in the same city at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that we see each other on a regular basis, that's weird. Most people are living their lives, if they're lucky, within a couple hours of maybe another romance writer, but most people, not even that.
Yeah.
And so much of our interactions happen online. And what a great way to force people to talk to you. Host a show.
It's brilliant.
I like to make friends. And so, I wanted to make friends within the genre. And like you said, since so much of what we do is online and kind of separate, it can be really hard to do that, especially when you're starting out. If you're not able to afford to go to conventions and things like that right away, online spaces can be great places to try to foster those connections with other folks. And I think I like to be pretty transparent about this. Like, I'm getting something out of it too, but I want also the viewers to be getting stuff out of it as well. And I'm always open to suggestions. And as I move forward, like, I want to start bringing in not just authors, but I'd like to talk more with narrators, with some cover artists, just to kind of hear more from other people who are also an important part of the genre.
Yeah, we've also talked about trying to get some cover artists because it's just an art form that I have no concept of how they accomplish what they accomplish. Even as somebody, like, I have graphic design experience, I know my way around some Illustrator and some Photoshop, but like their art is so specific and it is such a specific skill set and taste level, aesthetic that like it's a special kind of person. So we share that goal, and hopefully we can elevate more of those beautiful artists within our industry.
Yeah, I think I need to make sure I can find some who are comfortable being on camera and sort of talking about
that's
what they
the trick.
Right? But they're so gifted. And when I was very young, like a child, I like really thought, it'd be so great if I could be an artist, and was like very depressed when early on I was smart enough to realize I did not have artistic talent when it came to drawing, painting, and any of that kind of stuff. I wish I did, but I don't, right? I also learned early on in the cover art process, I do not know how to pick models for cover art. I need to leave that to the cover artist. Because apparently I'm weird, and like what I think is like, ooh, that's attractive. They're like, no, that won't sell. And I'm like,
fascinating.
Okay, I'll let you pick.
It is pretty tough. I've only had to pick one person for like a model for a cover one time because all my stuff is typically illustrated, and it's kind of a grind to like go through all of those photos, and then like you find one and it costs like $400 and you're like, you know what I mean? Like it's tough to try to find that balance of like, this is affordable and also good, and it matches what the cover artist can actually do with it. And I think she ended up like photoshopping the dude's head on a different body because what I had picked,
just do it all the time.
Yeah, it just is not going to work. So it's just not in our brain when we're thinking about that stuff.
I'm sorry, $400 for a photograph,
dude. Yes. I'm not even joking.
Okay, coming soon, Hoof and Fang cover model photographs because we will be. We will be finding some local Midwestern men, and we will be putting them on book covers.
Just have them with some flannel. I buy it. I love it.
Okay, so we've immediately gone off on a tangent. So let's go off on another one because it relates to your vidcast as well as what we're going to be talking about with your books, which is I cannot believe we have gone 32, 33 episodes of this podcast, and I don't think we've ever talked about tentacles.
You know what? I am surprised and a little disappointed.
So we're going to rectify that right now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning of your author journey. Like, how did you become an author? What was it that led you not only to writing, but also to the genres that you've embraced?
Wow. Okay. I'm going to, this might be a semi-long-winded story. We'll see. I'll try and make it more succinct. I think like a lot of writers, I started writing pretty young. My gateway was reading, and it was epic fantasy. I was in about 4th grade and I discovered Terry Brooks' The Sword of Shannara in a bookstore. And my dad always had this policy where he would buy me one book that I wanted anytime we went to a bookstore. And I saw this, and I'd never read a fantasy novel like this before. And it was like, it was like 800 pages or something ridiculous, right? And so, but he bought it for me and I devoured it in then I had to get all the other books and I was hooked. And so my first writing, I wrote like a novella in like 7th grade that was basically Terry Brooks fan fiction. Right? So that's kind of early on where I started. I then wrote like an actual novel when I was about 21. Now, as a Gen Xer who I have a birthday coming up next week, Monday, unfortunately tax day, I'm going to be 45. So when I wrote that at 21, there was no self-publishing. It was all agent kind of stuff. And it was right around the time in the very early 2000s when like urban fantasy was hot. Like it had exploded on the scene. And I wrote a really kind of bad urban fantasy novel. And I shopped it around with some agents. I got some manuscript requests, but it never went anywhere. And I just kind of thought like, wow, this just must be so hard. Maybe I don't have what it takes. And I went on and did other stuff because my day job, I'm an academic by training. So I was doing a PhD and all of that kind of stuff. And I sort of got focused on doing academic writing for quite a while. And then, periodically I would pick up stuff, but it just wouldn't really go anywhere. And then the pandemic happened. And I had all this time where I was home and, I think that like many people, I had this sort of existential, like, what am I doing with my life kind of time to ponder. And I was thinking about, things that I wanted to do. And then sadly, I had a relative who I was very close with, my aunt, who died unexpectedly during the pandemic, just kind of like a freak accident. Fell down some stairs and injured herself and head injury, basically. And, she was only 57. And it really kind of made me think like, oh my gosh, the dreams that I had thought about, like, oh, I'll do them someday. I was like, what if someday never happens?
Yeah.
And so I really it was this weird kind of kick in the ass from the universe of like, you've got to go and do this now if you want to do it. And so that's kind of what got me started. Yeah. And the first book I wrote, It's Not Unusual to Be Loved by an Alien, was essentially the book I wanted to read during the pandemic. It was a sci-fi, campy, rom-com, and it was super nerdy, super geeky, and nobody else was really writing what I was wanting to read. And so I was like, well, I'm going to write it and maybe some other people will like it. And that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. There's so many buzzwords that we love in that description.
Yeah.
Funny, geeky, nerdy.
Rom-com.
Rom-com. Yeah. And it's like you market yourself very well because your website makes it very clear what kind of books you're getting. And that campy aesthetic really comes through. And like, it's really wonderful that you have that brand with only a few years of like marketing yourself as an author. Like you really found yourself and did a great job of telling people who you are.
I mean, I did get started later, I think, than some people, so maybe that helped. But yeah, I mean, I think I've always had a love for campy, geeky, queer humor. As a queer person myself, who's came out in the '90s and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I I know who I am, and so it kind of helped in terms of being able to create that sort of image. But I'm also an academic by training, so I did a lot of research beforehand and like listened to a lot of podcast episodes on like author branding and how to kind of develop all of that. So I'm sure that helped too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that we've heard from several authors now that like the pandemic was the impetus for them.
Yeah.
Really examining, like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
And I will say, I was sort of hoping your aunt story was also going to come with an inheritance.
Oh, right.
I was like, oh no, this is so tragic, but also she gave you a lot of money and that gave you time to write. I think I dream that for other people because I so wish that would happen for me.
Yeah, same.
It's just never going to.
Yeah, I feel like that's more of like a story I could write than a reality I would experience, but
So you wrote about the Alien story, and then we also have the Monster series.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
which are cozy monster romances, and which I love.
And again, their titles and blurbs tell you exactly what these books are.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell us more about that series as well?
Yeah, okay, so Monsters Hollow, it's really a cozy monster romance series set in a quirky, magical small town that I made up that's sort of situated in the Finger Lakes region of New York State. And it's a sanctuary haven in this world in which other creatures that I call other kind live amongst humans, but some of them prefer to live in safe spaces where they don't have to deal with human bigotry and anti-other kind sentiment. And so there are a number of these sanctuary havens that are magically protected. And the first full-length book in the series, The Orc and the Manny, which came out in the last fall, is about a human Manny who gets hired to help take care of two little orc children who lost their mother and have been put under the guardianship of one of her best friends, who's like a retired orc professor who has no idea how to deal with children. And so the Manny is sort of like, think, Nathan Lane in the Birdcage meets Mary Poppins.
Holy shit.
Silver Fox orc professor kind of thing. And that's their sort of romantic dynamic. And I have two also prequel novellas in this series, The Bogeyman and the School Teacher, and The Demon and the Librarian. And then the second full-length novel, The Gargoyle and the Romance Writer, is coming out April 30th.
Fantastic.
Right? Oh my God. Fantastic.
I love that. It is the world of monsters sort of an allegory for the queer experience? Or was that just something you came up with?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of that, even with my aliens as well. And being a queer person myself and having experienced varying degrees of these kinds of issues, and also just being a woman. Right. I feel like, often I like to explore these dynamics of often through different species or beings and stuff in my work. Although like Monsters Hollow kind of came about in part because I wasn't really seeing a lot of people doing the softer side of monsters. Like I get the allure of like dark monster romance, but I don't really write dark and I don't tend to read dark myself. And so I was like, but there's a lot of potential for like more like cuter, funnier monster stories. And sort of like the tagline of the series is like basically essentially monsters deserve love too, right? And so that's kind of how it all sort of works together. And so like each of the books is sort of like the other kind and who they're romantic partner is. So I can sort of give you the sneak peek that book 3 will be the Sasquatch and the hairdresser.
So cute. That is so cute. I love that.
That is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I ask is because it's not unique to the queer experience, but like we do that. Like we create spaces for ourselves.
Right.
Yes.
But like, so do people who have differences of race and religion. I mean, it's why there's a Chinatown in so many cities.
Yeah.
Like we tend to find or create spaces where whatever differences we feel we have as we're walking through the world just sort of go away. And in that space, at least, we're just the next person on the street and how healing that can be. So to me, that was it's always interesting when I see an author use that conceit, and I don't know that I've seen it used so specifically as what you were describing, where I saw such a parallel there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly transparent, I think, in what I do. Part of it's also, I think, my own outlet, because I live in a smaller rural area for my day job. I've lived in bigger cities before. I've lived in the gayborhood, essentially, but here I don't have queer community like I used to have in other places that I've lived. And so sometimes when I write some of these kinds of stories, part of it's all my, an impetus is sort of, well, what would this kind of utopian type of space where I would want to go live or hang out be kind of like? And so it's been really nice to hear some readers basically tell me like, oh my God, I would love to live in Monsters Hollow, right? Because that's the vibe I wanted to kind of give to this place, that it was really quirky and unique and everyone's really different and distinct and they all get along in this beautiful kind of harmony. That they don't have like crime essentially in the town because of how the magic works to kind of prevent things. They only have kind of like petty things, like like the nudist gnome colony that like the poor police chief has to deal with, so I mean it's all more comedy based kind of stuff. So
that's hilarious.
The nudist gnome colony. Holy crap.
I mean, it must be hard to find clothes that size.
Yeah. And I mean, they're usually pretty nature-centric people, so maybe they're just like, why bother? We'll just wear our pointy hats.
I was going to ask if they wear the hats. Do they keep the hats?
Well, they have the beard, which can kind of like casually cover certain things. But yeah.
I love an author that's really thought things through.
Of course, yes.
Okay, so let's break open the conversation. Tentacles.
Yes,
sure.
Say more about tentacles. As someone who has yet to experience, I mean, I can't believe I haven't narrated a tentacle
I was about to say, you haven't?
I mean, there have been some longer tales, like those get used, but true tentacles. Okay, one. I did one.
Okay, you did one. Okay,
but it wasn't like a real prominent part. He was like a shifter, so like it was part of it.
Oh, gotcha.
But it wasn't like that sort of tentacle situation.
Okay.
So, as a newbie, explain it to me. Say more.
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, tentacles are fun, is my kind of view on it. But I think everyone's a little different in terms of how they write them, right? So, there are people who like to do kind of more like the Kraken kind of sea monster shifter or whatever type of dynamic. The way that I have done them has been primarily with aliens. So when I was starting the Alien series, I knew that because my series takes place on Earth in Las Vegas, where I figure aliens could hide among us really easily in the bizarrety that is Las Vegas. And of course, this plays a central part in a lot of the story and how they camouflage aliens in all kinds of settings, including a male strip show review with aliens, which I think would sell really well. But
I mean, I'd go.
When I was kind of conceiving of the series, I knew that the kind of main aliens would be able to pass a humanoid appearance kind of thing, right? But I wanted them to have something that made them really different. And being a big sci-fi nerd, my brain immediately went to Galaxy Quest with the Thermians, who like are actually really just wearing kind of like a holographic kind of, but underneath they're like these squid-like kind of aliens with all these tentacles. And I thought, well, I don't want it to necessarily be like that, but what if he had hidden tentacles in his body, right? And they would come out at various times. And so that's kind of what got me started with it. And then I just could not stop thinking about the many ways in which tentacles could lend themselves to all kinds of comedic scenarios, including like, do you wear a condom on a tentacle when you're going to use this in certain capacity? And so
it's a good question.
So for me, so they have like multiple purposes. Like they're essentially other appendages, right? And like the alien creatures that are central to the story are from a world that, is highly aquatic. So they're also functional for swimming and stuff like that. But they can be used in all kinds of other situations and scenarios for plenty of fun times. So I think that, tentacle stories vary a lot. Like one of the things that I get a lot of comments on is that people are really surprised that my series is not just tentacle porn, which is where I think a lot of people immediately go in when they hear tentacle. And it may be why they decide, oh, yes, I will read this, or no, I don't want to read this. And so, my stories, at least, the tentacles are just a facet of the character, and it's something that makes them distinctive to their species, but it's not just a nonstop tentacle sex kind of romp. There's other stuff going on, community building, saving alien refugees, and other stuff like that. So, but other writers, sometimes it is really more of an erotica kind of thing. So there's a whole spectrum, really, I think, when it comes to tentacle stories.
Thank you for that education and posing a really interesting question that gets to live in my brain.
Yeah.
From now on.
I watched you process. You're just like, I don't know.
Would they need a condom for a tentacle?
Yeah.
Would they need a specially made condom if they did? Okay. All
right.
right.
See, we'll have to read and find out.
No, that is, I mean, obviously I am aware that there is every kind of story out there. And those stories are for someone. For sure. So I never want to yuck anybody's yum, but that is just truly like something that I have been on the outskirts of for so long, just watching and being like, what is going on over there in those tentacle books? Like, what's going on?
I think, always read the description really carefully, like with anything. But I've had a number of people who were like, I just didn't think I would like tentacles. And then I read your book and now I'm a convert, it's one of those things where, if you can find a happy balance that people are going to be into.
I would hope that is a result of the fact that they just get invested in the story and the characters. Yeah. And that beyond that, because like I surprise myself sometimes when I'm in the booth and I'm reading what I think is a campy or silly or just plain weird romance. And it's like, okay, well, this is for the paycheck. And I get into it and suddenly like I'm crying because something has happened. And I was like, why am I crying over this gargoyle? Like, this is ridiculous.
Yes. Those are the best kind of books, though. They lure you in with the like cheesy monsters and then they just rip your heart out. It gets
to the point where you're past what they are and you are concerned about who they are. Which is such a wild thing to say with some of the weird characters that I have performed. That like they shouldn't have as much humanity as writers give them, but they do, and they must, because that's where the story is.
Right.
Well, and oftentimes, I mean, I think monsters in general kind of come from a longer horror tradition where, like, the monster is often used to reflect back to us, like, our own kind of fears, but also sometimes the bigotry of humanity, right? I mean, the quintessential Frankenstein narrative, like, Frankenstein's monster in the novel is a highly sympathetic figure, but because he looks so appalling, humanity can't get past it and they, reject him. And so, I mean, which I think any queer person can relate to those kinds of narratives. But I think that even sometimes in something like paranormal romance or whatever, this character who is other from humanity often shows like the flaws of humanity, because sometimes they are far kinder and far more humane than the humans around them.
Mm. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, when we're writing monsters, they're never the monster in the book. Like they're always the things that are being either oppressed or misunderstood, or like they're the gooey sunshine people, and the humans are the ones that need
cinnamon
to be
roll
brought.
Monsters. I love those.
Exactly. Yeah. Cinnamon roll monsters, I think, are I mean, I love good grumpy monsters, don't get me wrong. Yes. But when they circumvent your expectations and like this big, like a big, huge orc coming out and he's like a professor, like that's amazing. I love that, Like I like it when I expect them to be these hardened things and really they just love flowers or something, just like totally sweet. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like when I was thinking up that character, I was like, I want an orc who is not a barbarian, right? Because I feel like that's such a common kind of archetype within the fantasy genre. And I was like, no, but like this guy's like, he's refined and he, has his little professor suits that he wears. And I mean, he's a big muscular guy, but he's not a barbarian at all. He'll sit and talk to you about his academic work at length, So, I mean, I like those kinds of kind of reversal of expectation with characters. I don't like to kind of do the very obvious thing, I guess.
Now, was this orc pressured to become a barbarian? Like, are his orc parents disappointed when he sat them down and said, Mom, Dad, I'm going into academia?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Good.
So why can't you be more like your brother?
Bone Smasher. We need more nerdy orcs. I'm for that. I love that.
Right? Yes, totally. I love it.
Nerdy orcs in a bone smashing world.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
Love that.
I'd like to circle back to how we started the conversation. In your experience of getting to talk to other authors, are there any lessons that you took away from them, or anything that was shared with you that you thought was particularly resonant, that you just want to spread the word about?
Oh, so many things. I think that mindset is really one of the big ones in terms of, I think that this is a long game if you are serious about it and you want to keep writing for the duration. And any kind of long game is going to have ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And to be able to kind of not lose your self-confidence, your focus, your aspiration, mindset's really important to that. I think it helps for me that my number one Clifton strength is futuristic. So I tend to have, I already know, I've got 7 different series that I have planned out. And I mean, I have books ready to write for probably 5 to 7 years, essentially. And so, for me, I always tend to think big picture, long term, but not everybody's necessarily like that. So I do think that mindset can be really critical to sort of maintaining your daily equilibrium. I also think that, a lot of authors that I've listened to and interviewed, especially those who've been doing this for 10 or more years, kind of universally say one of the number one most critical things to being able to keep doing this is perseverance, right? And again, I think mindset comes into that because it can be easy to lose confidence and not be driven to persevere. And so I think that has been really important. The other thing I would say is there is no one way to do things. right? And I learned this really early on. In fact, I kind of discovered what I think was one of the things that really held me back for many years. When I would kind of write, I'd start something, but I'd never finish it, is that I actually compose better by dictating my draft first.
Oh.
So I write 98% of my books via dictation in the first round, because when I discovered dictation was an option, I immediately just adapted to it. I was like a natural with dictation. I was like, oh my God, this is like the thing I've been waiting for forever. This is so easy. And what it does for me is it turns off my mental like critic editor, that when I'm staring at a page and trying to type a sentence, it's like one step forward, two step back kind of writing dynamic. And I would just get in this cycle of not being able to like move forward, because I'd want to keep tweaking and changing and editing, and then you can just get tired of it. And so for me, and for the longest time, I thought how I had to do this was I had to sit and I had to type in a document, right? And then I discovered dictation, and I was like, okay, this is actually what works for my process, right? So I think that's been really valuable advice, is that there's never just one universal way things have to be done.
I love that particular strategy because before there were computers, before typewriters, before pen and paper, before chisel and stone, like we were oral storytellers. Yes. And so it goes back to a very fundamental part of who we are as humans. It is why I love doing what I do. It's why I think things like podcasts and audiobooks are still popular. Radio is still popular, even though like we almost should have expanded beyond this only audio medium, but we are, as human beings, oral storytellers. And I think it just will always appeal to us. And I think that that's a great method.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a huge audiophile. Like I have tons of audiobooks. I listen to them all the time. And, also partly because I look at a computer a lot for my day job and stuff like that. When I have free time and I want to read, audio is often more my go-to, like 2 out of 3 times, right? I'll go to audio. And, I grew up with a grandmother who like would read to me all the time. And I love the art of storytelling and listening to it. And I think that when we look at the rise in audiobook sales, like I was just listening to this report where they were talking about, ebook print growth is really stagnant, but audiobooks have, they keep every year getting bigger and bigger.
12 straight years of double-digit growth.
Yes, exactly. And I think a lot of it has to do with like time that people have, or like getting overloaded with screen time, or like just the fact that like there are a lot of people who have like dyslexia or other issues that make reading an ebook or a print book more challenging for them, but audio is something they connect with. And so I think we're going to continue to see more and more audio, and I'm excited for it personally. I'm trying to put all of my stuff in audio too, but it's expensive, so it's kind of like it's not going as quickly as I would love it to, but so I've had really good success with the audio. Greg Boudreau is doing my Alien series, and
I saw that. Greg's great.
Loads of fun. He does a great job. Yeah,
you're very talented.
Yeah,
and good guy. So
yes.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end.
Yeah, right.
And other than just saying thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I hope you'll come back.
Oh, anytime. I would love to. And I'm going to see you, Kirt, at the Rainbow Readers Cruise.
Oh, another friend on the boat.
Yay! IRL. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait. Oh, we had such a fun time talking with Chloe.
Yeah, she was delightful.
It's nice to have an extrovert on the podcast every now and again.
100%.
So yeah, there's so much to learn about her and new cozy monster romances. And don't forget that you should follow her. All her social media will be linked in our show notes. And The Gargoyle and the Romance Writer launches April 30th.
So we should go pick that up.
Yeah.
Sounds so cute.
Yeah, that sounds adorable.
Yeah.
So you should check her out, check us out. All our socials are also in the show notes. And as always, you can find us on Patreon, where you can join at either the $5 or $10 level. And we will be announcing our next audiobook next week.
Exciting.
We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.